Lisa. I'm back again with Charlie Morris from Bytetree. Charlie, thank you so much for joining us again.
Pleasure to be here on this fine day.
Yes, it is a great day, isn't it? So we're going to talk a little bit about the Bitcoin macro view as it relates to on-chain data. And I know you have a couple of interesting stats for us. So let's kick it off with a new methodology to capture transaction value.
Sure. So what's happened here is that, we created our first transaction value number back in August 2014. So, we were kind of looking at, wondering at what point we should do some service on this anyway and see if we should update our methodology. But as luck would have it, there's been some interesting traffic trends over the summer, and some privacy coins have, gone bananas. And what you've had is different types of transaction evolving over the years. And so people are using the network in different ways. For example, it costs more to send a transaction these days than it once did. People used to think that sending transactions was virtually free at one time. People talked about micropayments, but now, we sometimes see hefty numbers, more than a round of drinks to send a Bitcoin transaction. So, that can happen. So we're seeing bunching of transactions together. We're also seeing demand for privacy. And in that sense, people put all their money together and kind of treat it as one. So it's very hard for the regulators trying to understand what belongs to who. And so some of this sort of traffic was obfuscating our financial data. Now, the interesting thing about on-chain metrics is when it comes to something like spend, there is no exact number as to how much money is changing hands over the blockchain. You have to make assumptions and you come back with an estimate, because it's not like a bank account when exactly you started with $10, you end up with $5. There's no question that the transaction was $5. But in blockchain, it's subjective for various reasons, and that's part of the elegance of the system, because to think it probably would work with a very clear transaction if Bitcoins had serial numbers, but they don't. They have provenance, like a good bottle of wine. And for that reason, it is much more complex to do this. This is why we have powerful computers behind the scenes trying to do precisely this. But the reason why the on-chain stat is important is because effectively the network is if you think, what does Bitcoin do? It transfers value. The more value that transfers, the more the network is worth, in the same way that if you have a very fast runner, the faster they run, the more they're worth, right? And so someone doing what they do best. So that's really what it comes down to. And our new methodology strips out a lot of this fake traffic not fake traffic, but the confusing, obfuscated traffic that's been occurring over the summer, and brings it back down. You can see that in the chart. So our old data flew off in the yellow line, and we brought it back to the blue. And I think that's really reassuring. We've had this opportunity, and it's not just the fact that we've managed to get rid of some of this traffic. We identified new types of traffic, which are also interesting. And so, on the second slide, if we can move to that.
Yeah, the complex and batch spend. Yeah,
I mean, what you've got here is the complex spend really is the attempt to look for privacy. So you've got these transactions that are much larger than they actually are economically. So there could be $100 million moving around, but actually there's only $5,000 of economic transaction. So it's quite easy to pick up far too much traffic there. And the other one is batching. So batching can be used by legitimate organizations like Coinbase, for example, to save their customers money. They might put 100 different transactions together. So I think it's all part of the journey of trying to understand more about what's going on to the blockchain. And I suppose the bottom line is, what's the macro implication this week? Well, not much, because the data's pretty smooth. It's no change on last week materially. We're not growing, we're not declining. So I think there's not a big story there. But the fact that we've got better, cleaner data to use in the future is very exciting for us.
Indeed. So let's take a look at the network velocity for Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if you change the number, so you can see the methodology a couple of slides ago, the number is slightly different. And we've always said that 600% network velocity is the point at which you should be concerned about the network. If it drops below, then the price action is less likely to be strong. It's the same in an economy. People get excited and prices tend to rise when you've got money moving around very quickly. When money's standing still and not moving, you have a deflationary problem. and the economy can grind to a halt. And so
Mhm.
it's the same, it's a simple measure, and I'm oversimplifying a complex story here. But basically that's what's going on. You know, a lively Bitcoin is a valuable Bitcoin, and a dead Bitcoin is a worthless Bitcoin. I think, you know, you stick to that simple principle, then that works well. And there's just been some crazy bullshit on the internet recently from people talking about network velocity. There was one, I won't mention their name or the news organization, but they were, you know, saying that low velocity implied high hodl, which was value creating. You know, as if, you know, along the lines of the stock to flow ratio, the more Bitcoins you take out of the system, the
Mhm.
fewer there are to buy, so the price must go up. You know, this is the biggest bullshit in the whole of the Bitcoin blockchain sphere. This idea that you start tearing up Bitcoins and destroying them, and they can only go up. I mean, yes, that would be true if they represented, you know, the Emperor's Palace in Tokyo, or a large pile of gold, or whatever, but they don't. They're a network. The values of the network, the values in having many of them moving around. And so the more you take out of the network, the less value you have. So I'd say it's the other way around. And we would say, you know, the more Bitcoins that can move, the more vibrant we can make this economy, the more money will be made. It's a very, very simple equation, and we can prove it.
Okay, so the testing velocity, highest returns, one above 600%.
Yes, I mean, as I say, we need to recalibrate the numbers slightly, but this is using the new data, and there it is. You know, whenever the velocity of the network is above 600%, you tend to make quite a lot of money.
Mhm.
And in this particular chart, I'm sorry, I have to look right, but you know, it's either Bitcoin's up 10 times or a bit more since 2014. It's a bit more than that on the chart. It's a log scale, and it's, you know, it's up another 5 times. Or if you only were invested when the network was above 600%. And whenever the Bitcoin network velocity was below 600%, it was never profitable, ever. You know, so, you know, you missed all that time. Every time it was below 600%, you can see on each occasion, it was either flat or down. And so, you know, the lesson is very simple. A lively network is a valuable network.
Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
I always love your very transparent and direct assessment of what's
It was
happening.
a pleasure to be here, and it's such a shame we're on Zoom.
I know. Well, soon, hopefully not. It'll be a pleasure
Great.
to do it in person. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.